People remember this story as a gentle winter fable, yet Hans Christian Andersen wrote it with a blade. There is no lucky stranger, no last-second rescue, no door that opens because the clock strikes. What he gives us is a street where light stays behind glass, a child who trades minutes of life for small fires, and a city that learns nothing by morning. If you expect comfort, set that expectation down now. We follow the story exactly as Andersen set it down. A single child spending her last sparks for moments of warmth, while the night shows no mercy and there is no twist waiting to save her. She starts the night already losing. A wheel takes one shoe in the street's blind rush. A boy takes the other because he is faster than her voice, and the road keeps what it wants. Her toes meet ice scored by cart ruts that bite through thin skin. Her fingers harden until they feel like someone else's hands tied to her wrists. The bundle at her side is worth a meal only if a stranger stops long enough to buy a spark. People move with the urgency of those who own doors. They shift their bodies to avoid her. Their eyes travel over her face as if she were part of the weather, rather than a person passing through it. Two walls meet in a narrow angle where old smoke has stained the brick. She knows the grit there will take a match head. Using one is a loss. Keeping them all is a longer loss. She chooses quickly. The stick catches with a small roar and the light climbs the corner until the alley becomes a room with a cast iron stove that drinks air and returns heat in a steady pulse. Warmth moves from her palms into her forearms like water poured into a dry cup. The match shortens. The stove pulls back into the dark. Cold steps in with the confidence of a collector who arrives on time. Heat touched only the skin, so hunger answers next. She strikes again. A table stands before her with a white cloth and a goose turning on a spit. The skin blisters where fat gathers. The smell cuts through the ache and reaches the memory of being fed without asking. The flame thins to a wire. The room folds like a stage set, and the alley settles into its old shape of brick, frost, and breath that refuses to warm. At this point, what do you think she is doing? Buying survival 1 minute at a time, or choosing the last images of her life with care because the street refuses to give her better ones? Tell me in the comments before we go further. She strikes again. This time the darkness lifts on a fir tree so tall it seems to breathe. Hundreds of small candles sit on its branches without trembling, the way lights do in shop windows when glass keeps the wind out. She watches the flames rise like tiny stars. A bright streak crosses the sky, and an old saying returns. When a star falls, a soul begins a journey. The match ends. The tree is gone, yet the saying stays, as if someone has set it down beside her on purpose. Her hands have turned wooden. She drags another head across the brick. A face builds out of the glow. The one person whose presence never demanded that she hurry, whose touch could move pain a little farther away without promising it would disappear. The alley loosens. The flame shakes. She answers with a second strike so fast it looks like one motion. Lines sharpen. The face holds. Snow seems to pause, though she knows it does not. She understands the rule. Fire dies. Cold waits. She fights rule with rhythm. Another match. Another flare. Another handhold for the mind. The bundle shrinks, which means morning will come sooner either way. She refuses to let the last thing she sees belong to the street. Sparks run along the thin sticks. The corner brightens until it looks like a room where a door might open if someone decided the latch mattered. She puts her hand into the light and feels pressure that belongs to memory, and to the person whose name she no longer says aloud. She feeds the flames as if she were keeping a small creature alive. Heat climbs the brick. For a short span, the alley looks almost like shelter. The night keeps its hour. She keeps hers. What begins as an emergency turns into a decision about the order in which she will leave her images behind. First heat, because the body sets the rules. then food because hunger blocks thought, then festival light, because the eye needs a reason to keep looking. Finally the face, because the soul steadies itself by choosing a witness. Morning finds her where the text says it will. A man steps into the lane and stops because something in the shape on the ground interrupts the ordinary walk. Another man comes closer. They speak the way neighbors do when news has not yet gathered force. They agree she tried to warm herself. They do not speak about doors that shut a little earlier than they had to, voices that could have said one more word the night before. The city moves forwards. The bundle sits quietly in her lap. The matches look spent because they did what they were made to do. No miracle lifts anything upwards. That restraint is the point. Readers divide at the calm on her face. Some see rest with someone beloved beyond the reach of this street. Others see refusal, the last look shaped on her terms rather than the alley's. Andersen writes it so that either reading can live, yet he never blurs the scene with comfort that would make the decision easier. The door stayed closed. He keeps that fact in view because moral language dissolves when details soften. He wrote from rooms that remembered cold. He also knew houses where breath did not show in the air. Success did not erase early winters from his work. In this story, he avoids lecture and uses structure instead. He builds the sequence like steps on a ladder someone might climb in a hurry. Each image arrives clean, holds just long enough, and disappears the instant the fuel is gone. Description never lingers long enough to turn pretty. Sentences move the way the matches move. Strike, flare, vanish, decide again. The economy is deliberate. It denies readers the ordinary ways we hide from hard endings. New Year's Eve matters because people make promises on that night. They swear they will notice more, open sooner, live better. He sets the child one pace outside those promises and lets us feel the distance between declaration and act. If anyone had carried a hand to the latch, the story would not exist. That is why he refuses a rescuer after the fact. He is not writing about fate. He is writing about habit. The matches are not symbols first. They are tools that buy seconds of light in exchange for wood that will never be used again. She uses them with a skill that comes from practice. She does not waste them. She accepts what each one can do and refuses to pretend it can do more. That is the realism beneath the visions. When later adaptations add a softened turn, they change the ethics of the piece. They move responsibility upward into myth rather than outward into the street, where someone might still be walking home with a key in hand. It is worth reading the witnesses carefully. Andersen gives them the mild tone of people who will be late if they stop too long. That tone cuts deeper than cruelty because it sounds like normal life observed from an angle. Horror arrives not through malice but through ordinary delay. The lesson, if you want one that does not curdle, is small and unforgiving. Open earlier. Speak faster. Assume less about who belongs outdoors when the hour turns cold. The images carry across centuries because they require little translation. A lane where wind can find you. A stove that could have prevented everything if it had been a few steps closer. A table that promises more than the street allows. A tree that turns light into ceremony. A familiar face that steadies the mind. A bundle that shrinks in direct proportion to time. None of these depend on era or decor. They form a rhythm that forces the question of what neighbors owe each other before policy arrives with numbers. If you retell it, keep the verbs honest. She walks, she waits, she chooses, she strikes, she sees, she chooses again. Others see her. They choose something else. That is the entire plot. Anything added to soften the pattern risks turning the story into decoration. Andersen denies that exit because he wants the pressure to remain after the last line, not evaporate into a pleasant throb of pity. Some will insist the smile is proof that heaven has the last word. Others will argue that a final vision does not equal rescue. You can hold either view and still keep the part that matters for this world. If you believe she found peace, Treat living children with the urgency that belief demands. If you believe she refused to let the alley own her last look, honor that refusal by rejecting the delays that keep latches closed. The text does not require theology. It asks you to remember which side of the glass holds the heat and which side holds the person who needs it. Andersen did not stumble on this severity. He had trained himself to write with clear edges. He trimmed sentiment until only pressure remained. In other tales, he allows marvels to bend outcomes. Here, he strips the mechanism to cause and effect. He sets a child in a place that will not give and shows what resources look like when only small means are available. She does not plead. She works. The work is choosing in what order to endure the last hour. Look at how carefully he orders images. Heat first because pain rules the body. Food next because hunger steals thought. Celebration after that because memory needs a reason to keep looking at the world. Finally, the presence that lets the mind steady. He is cataloguing human needs in a sequence so exact it reads like a chart hidden in narrative clothing. The story's power comes from that clinical honesty. It refuses to blink. It refuses to bargain. It lets a child exercise what control she has, and then refuses to pretend that control is enough. Many retellings try to add a lesson for passers-by within the scene. They place a candle in a window or a character who hesitates longer than usual, as if awareness were a form of rescue. Andersen withholds that move because it drains energy from the only person who matters in the final pages. He centers her decisions, not their half-formed guilt. The wake-up call belongs to readers without stealing the last dignity from the subject. Notice also how the city's morning enters without trumpets. There is no crowd. There are two men, routine voices, a conclusion formed in a sentence or two. They name what they see and keep walking because their lives have appointments. That quiet is the indictment. Big scenes would let viewers feel dramatic sorrow and then let them off the hook. Small scenes force reflection in places where applause is impossible. The supposed comfort of a spiritual reunion holds its place without cancelling the indictment. Andersen wrote it so the child chooses which image to keep as the last light goes. That choice need not erase the fact that a door remained shut. The story can hold both without collapsing. This is why it lasts. It gives each reader just enough room to place belief while keeping responsibility in the only place where responsibility can act. Return to the matches once more. They never promise more than they deliver. They are faithful to their nature. They keep time, honestly. The city is the liar when it pretends that a season requires this cost. We lie when we accept the lie without haste. The story exposes that habit by refusing our usual defenses. It leaves no comic relief and no side plot that might lighten the scale. It lets one child teach scale by the count of spent sticks. If you seek hidden codes or royal references, this tale will not meet you halfway. The origin people skip past is not a cipher for a dethroned figure or a parable smuggled out of court. It is the original severity that later culture kept sanding until the edge dulled. Put the edge back and every part aligns. The minutes purchased, the order of images, the tone of witnesses, the city that takes its step into the morning without insight. The shock lies in the discipline of the telling. It is a refusal to stage mercy that did not happen. You can test the honesty of any adaptation by watching what it does to the order. When a version moves rescue into place, the sequence breaks. When a version keeps the sequence and still asks for pity without action, it misreads the point. The point is not to feel virtuous sadness. The point is to recognize how little separates a warm room from the corner where two walls meet. The space between those places is a door and a habit, nothing more mysterious than a latch lifted sooner. Writers study this story because its craft teaches restraint. Filmmakers study it because its images strike quickly and then withdraw. Readers return because the pressure does not fade with fashion. Every winter provides a fresh staging. Every city produces a new corner where a child counts down, with small lights that lose to air. The tale endures because the world keeps providing cast and set without help from anyone except those who strike the matches. Remember the order because it contains the argument: heat, food, ceremony, witness. She does not chase wonders, she chooses realities that hurt less. The clarity of those choices makes the story endure, yet it also makes it impossible to excuse ourselves with slogans. If a reader wants hope, the text supplies it only as a demand placed on behavior outside the page. If this version kept the tension clean and the pace strong, subscribe for more originals told straight from the source. Like to push it toward viewers who only know softened retellings. And comment with one concrete habit this story demands in real life. Or name another classic you want rebuilt with the same honest edge.